So let's start now. So last class we were looking at the concept of friction, and what we showed was that in as far as the problems of friction went, that we stated three conditions: F is equal to mu s n, and these are from Coulomb's laws. These are laws which are F is equal to mu s n. This is the case of impending slip, this is the case of slip, and this is the case of no slip. Now, when we have a planar contact between two bodies, this is a block lying on a surface, then depending on these situations which I wrote, we can have, suppose we have a situation like this where the block is kept and a vertical force is acting on the block. So in this case, if at the contact I show a normal reaction and a friction, and if the body is in equilibrium, then clearly the friction force will be equal to 0. There will be no friction force because that is not warranted to be there. So friction basically, as we discussed, is a self-adjusting force which comes in to resist the motion of a body, and it acts in a direction so as to oppose the motion on the body on which you are looking at the friction force. So it opposes the relative motion with respect to the surface. Okay. So in a case like this, there is no friction force, and P plus W is equal to the normal reaction. The other thing I told you to be very careful of is that normal reaction should not be shown as passing through the center. In general, normal reaction is an whatever is the normal pressure at each point or normal force per unit area, you integrate it over the entire area. It may or may not pass through the center. So therefore, the location of normal reaction will be determined by calculating moments. Okay. Now we have a second case like this, where a force P is acting on the block in an inclined way, it is acting towards the right and downwards. So here, if we do a force balance, what we realize is that there is an x component of P, it is in the forward direction, so it will tend to move the body forward. So a friction force which will come in here will be acting in the backward direction. This is drawing the free body diagram of the block. On the floor, it will act in the opposite direction. Okay. So this is the friction force, this is the normal reaction, which will be equal to the y component of P plus W. And in case if there is no motion, that means there's a, and it is not about to move also, the force P. So this is a case of no slip, and then this friction force will be less than mu s n. Okay. Then we have a third case which will be when the block is, we keep on increasing this force P so that the block is just about to start sliding. When the block is just about to start sliding, then again friction force acts in this direction to oppose the force P in the tangential direction of the contact, and there, because it is impending motion, friction force is equal to mu s times n. And we have weight, we have this, so normal reaction will be there, and now normal reaction is not just W, but W plus Py when we do a force balance in the y direction. So therefore, that is how we work this out, and friction in this case is equal to mu s n. And then finally, maybe the block starts to move. If you increase the force P further, the block will start to move in the right direction. In that case, what the friction force which will act will be the kinetic friction, which will be equal to mu k times n. Now, in this, when we apply this equation, friction is just an unknown. It is less than mu s n, it does not give you anything about its relation with normal reaction. Only thing it gives you the maximum value it can attain. Whereas in these two cases, we are relating friction to the normal reaction. Therefore, if we have a problem and we are drawing free body diagrams, in the last two cases you have to show the correct direction of the frictional force at that contact. You have to show it with the right sense. So, you have to do an analysis in your mind as to how the body will be moving, and therefore, when it moves or when it is about to move, what will be the tendency to move, and so friction force has to be shown along with the correct direction. Whereas, in this case, even if I show friction as acting in the forward direction, it will not make a difference, because when I do my equilibrium equations, I will get this as an unknown force, I will get it as a minus sign. It is something like reactions at a contact or reactions at a pin. If we put them with wrong signs, we will get a minus in our answer. So, that is what will happen here, but in cases like this, maybe in this problem it will work out, you will get it with a minus sign. But in general, when you are relating F to N, when friction and normal reaction are related, then we cannot work out, we have to show the right direction. So, okay. So, this is how we work out. Now, as I told you that when we studied this, sometimes the problem of determining which way will the body move becomes a problem. And in equilibrium problems of friction, the problems will do, there are some cases where you will be asked to check, does the body move at all. Then there is a second class of problems which is slightly more difficult, where you have to find the minimum or the maximum force required, so that either the body can move or the body can stay at rest. So, force, for example, in the particular problem, if I give you the values of weights and coefficient of friction, and I ask you the force P which was applied so that the body just starts to move. So, that would be the second case, and there you would be using the condition of impending slip. Okay. So, that would be another class of problems, and then the third class of problems would be where there is actual motion taking place, and then you have to work out how the motion takes place. Now, a lot of these problems are quite straightforward, but when we ask you to find the condition when limiting motion or force to start moving the body. Now, there what we have to realize is that there are possibilities. Let us have a, when we have a planar contact, and a force P is applied like this, and we wish to find P so that the block starts to move. Okay. So, now let us say the weight of the block is given, P is given, this is given, in all this. Now, we have to find P so that the block starts to move, and here the coefficient of friction will also be given, let us say it is mu s and mu k. Now, in this case there are two possibilities in which the block can move. One possibility is it will slide. The other possibility is it could tip about the point on the right. So, let us write this. So, this is, let us say if this is point A, there are two possible motions, A, block slides on the ground, and B, the block tips about point A. Okay. Now, what is the difference in these two situations? If the block slides on the ground and I draw its free body diagram, I will have the force P, I will have the weight W, I will have normal reaction, and because the force P is acting in the forward direction, friction force will act on the backward direction, and this friction force will be equal to, if I have to find the force that it's just starting to move, then friction will reach its limiting value, it will be equal to mu s n. So, one general thing to do is, in all friction problems, first show the friction as F and then determine from the statement of the problem, is it an impending case or not. So, once we have this, then we can work out, we have to find the force P. So, first we do sigma Fy is equal to 0. So, W is equal to n. Once I know n, I can get the value of F, that must be equal to P, that will give me the value of P at which the block will just start to slide. This is how we would do the problem generally. But there could be a case if it is tipping. In this case, what happens is, if I draw the free body diagram of the block, we have the force P. Now, in this case, maybe I should explicitly show this distance where the normal reaction is acting is unknown, and actually to solve the problem I do not need to find x for the slipping motion. But when the block tips about point A, just when it is about to tip, where will the contact forces be acting? Only at the point A, not anywhere else. At everywhere, all along the contact, the forces will be 0. They will just come to concentrate at the point A. So, in this free body diagram, when I draw this tipping scenario, I will have a normal reaction here and a friction force here, and I have the weight. Now, this distance B is known. Okay. So, if this were the scenario, so then I will take moments about A and get the value of P, and that is what I will get is W times B by 2 is equal to P times H. I take moments about point A, W times B by 2 is equal to P times H. Okay. So, now I will get the value of P, and we will have to check which of these two is the lower one. I could have got that data directly from one of these. So, now in cases like this, you have to analyze two situations, or what you could have done is, in the first case, if you are solving the problem in the first case, work out the value of x. If x turns out to be less than b, your answer is okay. If x turns out to be greater than b, that means it will tip first. So, that last part of the analysis is very important in case there is a multiple motion scenario. You cannot just do it by a single single case, or if you are looking at this case first, then if you have worked out the value of P, you know from this P must be equal to F. Then check if this is less than mu n or not. If this is bigger than mu n, that means this will start to slip first. So, you have to do that analysis, and only for one special case you will get that friction will be at its limiting value of mu n, and at the same time it will tip. So, that will just be a very special case. So, you have to do an analysis like this to be able to work out the problems. Now, we can have a look at a similar problem which is there from your book. I have taken it from from the books, this thing which was from FPS edition, but it doesn't matter. We have a pipe on which a bracket is placed. Now the bracket is placed, there is the two circular eye bolt type of things through which the bracket is hung on the pipe, and a weight W is acting on the pipe, and it says the movable bracket may be placed at any height on the pipe. If the coefficient of friction between the pipe and the bracket is 0.25, determine the distance x at which, minimum distance x at which the load can be supported. So this force W is being applied at a distance x. So if it is less than a critical distance, then the whole thing will slide down. Because of the force W, it will slide down. What is holding it is friction. So now here you have to find the value of x. So in problems, W is given to you, you have to find x. So now in problems like this, what you have to do is, if you draw the free body diagram here, now what you have to notice is, once W is applied, this bracket is there, and since it can slide, that means there is a small gap between the pipe and the bracket. So when W is applied, we have two contacts, one at the top and one at the bottom. Where will the bracket touch the pipe? So now the force W is being applied on the top bracket. So because of which there will be two contacts. On the top one, it will touch on the left. In the bottom one, it will touch on the right. So that means the contact which will take place in this case will be at this point and at this point. It will be on the top left and the bottom right. So now when I draw the free body diagram of the bracket, I will have contacts at the point on the left in the top and the point in the right. At the contact, what forces will act? Normal reaction and friction. So now if I start counting my unknowns, at the top left I have N and F, N1, F1. On the bottom right I have 2, N2, F2 and X. So total we have 5 unknowns. How many reactions will we get? How many equations will we get from our equilibrium? 3. Sigma Fx 0, sigma Fy 0, moment is equal to 0. So that means we are 2 equations short. Now in this case, because it will slide, so at both of these contacts, simultaneously friction will become equal to mu n. So it will be equal to mu Sn, as you said. So that means that two conditions will come from applying the limiting case, because here again the wording is minimum distance x. So therefore we will have, it will be equal to mu Sn at contact 1 and mu Sn at contact 2. Now in which direction will this bracket tend to move? It will move down. So friction will have to act in the upward direction at both contacts. So once we have done this analysis in our mind, all we have to do is draw the free body diagram. So we draw the free body diagram. On top pointage on the left, it is Na, the normal reaction which is acting on this thing, and friction force, because it will move down, will act in the upward direction. In this case, the normal reaction will be Nb, which is acting on the block because of this, and then we have friction force again will be upwards. So as we said, there were these 5 unknowns, and then we have Fa and Fb will be equal to mu times n, so they are no longer unknowns, and then we work out and we can get the value of x. So and there of course you have to be a bit sort of careful, or maybe choose the point smartly, so that you get, if possible, get your answer by applying only one of these 3 equations. You may not always, sometimes taking moments about a clever point gives you just one, but otherwise you may have to, but in general then. So you should always count the number of equations and number of unknowns when you work out the problem. And then now in these cases, because there was a point contact, so friction the normal reaction and friction acted through a single point. Now, so this is one type of problems which we have. Now, as I told you, there is a lot of error and lot of mistakes people do when they solve problems involving friction, and most of these come when we have contact between either two curved surfaces or a curved surface and a plane surface, and there could be multiple contacts. For example, here there could be a contact like this. Now, at the contact, first of all, it is a point contact. There could be a possibility the body is moving, yet one of the contact points has a zero velocity. When would that happen? When the body is rolling. When the body is rolling, it could be possible that the contact point has a zero velocity, the body is moving in the forward direction, because there is an angular velocity to the body. So, the body itself moves, but the point of contact may have a zero velocity. And now the dynamics of this, the kinematics of this, we will do in details in the second part of the course. But at least here itself we could see, suppose if we have a case like this and it is given that the impending motion or the motion of this cylinder is in the forward direction, some force is being applied. So, now when we draw the free body diagram of the cylinder, let us call this point A, point B, NA and B. Now, if in a lot of situations like this, what will happen is that you will have the cylinder will roll, but it will roll about one of the points, either A or B. It obviously will not be able to do that about both, because if both these points have zero velocity, it has to have a zero velocity. So, then you have to do an analysis, suppose, and here you may have to make assumptions. I will do an example where this will come. So, if we assume that there is no slip at B, okay. If there is no slip at B and the cylinder is supposed to move forward, how will the angular velocity of the cylinder be? So, this is how the angular velocity of the cylinder will have to be in a clockwise direction for it to move forward, if there is no slip at point B. Okay. If that is so, if this is the center of motion and there is either an actual angular velocity or a possible angular velocity in that direction, what will happen to point A? What will be the velocity of point A? Velocity of point A will be in this direction. Is that clear? Why? Because this is the center. I draw a line from O to A and I move it in the sense of the impending rotation. So, therefore, it has to be in the direction perpendicular to A in the sense of omega. Okay. So, if that is so, in which direction will friction act at point A? If the velocity is in the forward direction, friction on point A has to be in this direction. Okay. And if that is so, and then if it is slipping at point A, you are assuming that, then this will be equal to mu times n. and because it is slipping, or in this case it will actually slip or impending slip, then you have to put this is equal to, you have to show the correct direction, you can't show it as going upwards. And this is how you have to use kinematics in your mind. What will be the possible motion, and then try to work out the direction of friction. Is that fine? Now, suppose it was the other way round. That if there was no slip at A, now this is the center, if this has to move forward, in which direction will omega be? Then omega has to be like this, because then only, let us see, if this is omega, where is the center velocity? Center will be like this, it has a backward component. If it is clockwise, then let me just work out. Then let us see, 1 minute. This is A. Let us see if it is, if it is anti-clockwise, yeah. So, if this is the sense of omega, then the center will move with respect to this, OA, it will move like this, it will have a forward component of velocity. So, if there is no slip at A, then for the cylinder to move forward, omega has to be anti-clockwise. Is that clear? If omega is anti-clockwise, then the cylinder will move forward. If that is so, if omega is anti-clockwise and cylinder moves forward, what will be the velocity of B? Velocity of B will be in which direction? It will be in the forward direction. If velocity of B is in the forward direction, then friction on B will act in the backward direction. So, therefore, if we have a sense like this, then velocity of B is also in the forward direction, and friction at B is in the backward direction. So, when I draw the free body diagram, I will show the normal reaction at B, and at B, because there is actual slip taking place, this will be equal to FB, and FB will be equal to mu times NP. So, this sort of an analysis you may have to do when you solve the problem, and how this analysis is done, let me just illustrate this with a problem. Okay. We have this problem where a tractor is pushing a log on the ground with a constant speed V. The angle is 20 degrees, the dimensions are given, the weight of the log is 100 kilograms. Determine the normal force that must be exerted on the 100 kg spool to push it up the incline at constant velocity. The coefficients of static and kinetic friction at different contacts are given to you. So, we have to push this. Now, when you draw the free body diagram of the cylinder, there are contacts at 2 points, at A and at B. So, at both these contact points you will have normal reaction and friction force. Okay. So, now of course, so there will be we have to find out what the normal reaction which will there, which will be have to be applied. The weight, if I draw the free body diagram of the cylinder, how many forces are acting? It's weight and then 2 normal reactions, 2 frictions. Now, if we count, weight is already known to us. So that means how many unknowns do we have in the problem? 4. Na, Nb, Fb. 3 of them will come from the equation of equilibrium. The 4th will come from the limiting condition. So that means at one of the contacts A or B, we will have impending slip. At the other contact, it will be no slip. And this we will verify once we get our answer. By checking, we know the normal reaction and we know the friction, if friction is indeed less than mu n at the point where we assume there is no slip. Okay. So, and also to find the force N which must be required, which has to be applied, we have to see which of these scenarios is correct. We can't just assume one scenario and then say that this is correct. We have to verify that what we have assumed is correct, or we have to go to the other scenario. So, let us see how to do this problem. Once we have analyzed this, actually it is not a big deal, it is quite a straightforward problem. So, first we draw the free body diagram. In the free body diagram, we show the weight, we show Na, we show Nb. The 2 friction forces right now, maybe I do not even show them with the directions. I will just show that they act along this line, and the directions will come once I start the analysis. So, in the free body diagram, as we show, there are 4 unknowns Na, Nb, Fb and Fa. Now, which means that there is one equation of friction which has to be applied either at A or at B. So, if the slipping is occurring at point A, that means it is slipping at the bottom point, then basically what is going to happen is the whole thing will slide up, because it is slipping. So, whole thing will just slide, because if it also rolls, then the contact will be lost. So, it is just being pushed like as if it was just a block being pushed. Or the other possibility could be that slipping first occurs at B. In that case, the spool will roll up the incline. So, either it can roll up the incline or it can slide up the incline. At least at the limiting case, it will be then slipping will occur at point B. So, therefore, we have to find out, and actually eventually we have to find this Nb to solve this problem. So, now if the block were to slide up, then the friction on the block would be in the backward direction at A. Okay. If it were to roll up about B, in which direction would the impending motion be? If it were to roll up about B, it has to go up, so therefore it has to be anti-clockwise. If it is moving in a clockwise direction, it will move down. About it roll up about, let us see, okay, it will roll about, sorry, if it is rolling up about point A, if it is rolling up about point A, that means then how will it move? It has to move clockwise if it is rolling up about A. If it is moving clockwise, what happens to the direction velocity of point B? Velocity will be upwards. So, that is why then the friction on point B will be in the downward direction as shown here. Okay. So, this is how we get the directions of friction. Okay. So, now then we start, first we apply the general equations. We have 3 equations, we do sigma fx is equal to 0, sigma fy is equal to 0, and we take moments about the center is equal to 0. So, then when we take the moments, we get a relation between the 2 friction forces and we get these equations. So, these are 3 equations, 4 unknowns. So, first we apply the case that the spool rolls up the incline. If it will roll up, then friction at point A will be an unknown. It will just be f of A, and friction at point B will be mu times n. Okay. And because it is rolling up there, the friction there will be the coefficient of kinetic friction. So, therefore, it will be equal to mu k at B times Nb. We work that value and we get the value, we solve all the unknowns, Na, Nb, Fb, Nb. Now comes the critical point, that we have to check our assumption whether slipping at A is indeed happening or not. So, I look up at the value of Fa, I know Na, so I see what is mu A Na, and when I do this check, then Fa, which comes out to be 223.7, should be less than mu at A times N of A, that turns out to be equal to 206.2. So, therefore, this assumption is not valid, and hence we have to do the problem again. We have to do it assuming that it will slide up the incline, it will not roll up the incline. If this assumption was okay, we would have finished the problem. Suppose if we would have got an answer that this was 250, so then we would have just said okay, fine, but this checking was as important as solving the second part. So, therefore, after you get your answers, you have to check whether the assumption you made was correct or not. Once you do that, so now in this case we do the second case now, that it is sliding up the incline. In that case, if it is sliding up the incline, then friction force on A is equal to mu times N, and then you put that value, so then you get the value of friction force at B and Nb, and once you do this, then you see that indeed there is no slipping at B by looking at mu B times Nb and friction at B, looking at the limiting value which is equal to this, and then we do find that it has to match because it was not slipping at the other point. So, this is what causes a complication in problems of friction of this type, that you have to, that there may be multiple contacts and then slipping will not take place at all of them simultaneously. If it is a sliding type of problem, life is relatively easier because you know it's sliding, the direction of friction is not an issue. In these cases with rolling things, you have to see in which direction is the velocity at that point vis-a-vis the contact point, and then work out the direction of the friction force, because you are, if you are putting F is equal to mu n, you have to put the correct direction. So, this is the, once you have this, I think most of the other problems then they become quite straightforward. Next, what we want to move on to is the topic what we call as belt friction. So, most of the friction problems you should be able to do with this. I think one of the, he may have solved some problems yesterday in the tutorial. Did he complete chapter 8? He did, okay. Except the belt problem, okay. So, I told him I will do the belt problems in the class. Now, so in this topic of belt friction, or suppose we have a cord wrapped around a post. So, we have this and there is a fixed pillar or a post. We will derive this formula for a circular post or circular pulley, whatever you may call it, but in general this could work even for non-circular things. So, here what happens is that when we say that the post is frictionless or there is no friction on the belt, then we get T1 is equal to T2. But if there is friction, then it turns out that for impending motion just to take place, T1 will not be equal to T2 and this will be related to the friction force. Now, in this and the next class of problems which we will do, what we do is that we apply this relation friction is equal to mu n, but so far we have applied it at either a point or in an integrated way, that for the entire contact we take it as a single normal reaction. But this relation that friction is equal to mu n for impending cases is also valid even if we have infinitesimal forces or forces. So, now if we talk of force per unit area, then the normal reaction would be equivalent to pressure. A force per unit area in the normal direction is what we call as pressure, and we will have a frictional force per unit area or per unit length along the tangential direction. And once again, the frictional force per unit area is related to the normal reaction per unit area by the same relation, that friction will be equal to mu times n when we have slip or impending slip, otherwise it will be less. So the same relation is to be used, but we will use it per unit area or per unit length. Now of course, there is a cord wrapped around a post. You have seen many problems, and this is probably, you see a small child holding a truck on the other side, that there is a truck which is wrapped around a post and a child is holding the truck. Now the child need not be a superpower, he need not be Hanuman to hold the truck. All he has to do is just wrap it around the post 2-3 times, and then even with a small force he will be able to hold the truck. And that is, at least some of you, if you are familiar, the relation between these two tension goes like exponential of the coefficient of friction times the angle of wrap. So here what we do is we look at the 2 points from where contact is taking place, or where you are just from the start of the contact to end of the contact, and look at this included angle, and this is the angle which will be related. And that is what I was saying, if you wrap it 2 or 3 times, then this angle beta keeps on, for each wrap, full wrap, the angle beta becomes 360 degrees or 2 pi. So let us now try to derive this relation between T1 and T2. So we have a belt which is on a post, and the 2 ends to the belt, it starts contact at this point and leaves contact at the other point. And in this case we are looking at the case when the belt is about to slide to the right. That means you are pulling the belt from the right. You will realize that, and that is the only sort of confusing thing which comes in these problems, is which side tension is greater. So here what you are doing is, the belt is being pulled, the impending motion on the belt is to the right. Okay. So what we do here is, we have to relate T1 and T2 when the belt is just about to slide to the right. So what we do is, we draw a free body diagram. We have this belt, we draw a free body diagram of a portion of the belt. So we look at a portion of the belt, we are starting from this end because the belt will slide to the right. So at an angle theta, we choose a sector of angle delta theta, and we draw the free body diagram of the belt between the points P and P prime. P starts at theta and P prime is located at an angle of theta plus delta theta from P1. So we draw free body diagram of the belt. Now this angle, the total subtended angle, is delta theta. Let the tension on the left side, which will be at an angle of delta theta by 2 from the horizontal, let this be T. On the right side, let the tension be T plus delta T. Okay. So we want, eventually when we integrate this, we will get the difference between T2 and T1. At the leftmost point T is T1, at the rightmost point T plus delta T will be T2, isn't it? So because we are looking at one portion of the belt, this angle is delta theta, this angle is T, that is at T plus delta T. So now the normal reaction which acts from the drum on the belt, we write it as delta N. This is the normal force which is acting on the belt. Now because the belt is about to slide to the right, it will have a friction force which will be acting, which will be towards the left, and we call that as delta F. So basically all the deltas represent that these are forces on infinitesimal areas, and because this is just about to start sliding, this will become equal to mu s times delta n. If it is a case of no slip, then it will just become equal to, it will be equal to less than, delta f will be less than mu s delta n, but when it is just about to slide, when the belt you are just about to pull, at that point it will be equal to mu s delta n. So, given these are the different forces acting. So, then it is a simple this thing, we work out, take sum of all the forces in the x direction is equal to 0. So, on the right we have t plus delta t, which is acting at an angle of delta theta by 2. So, we get t plus delta t cosine of delta theta by 2. On the left side we have t cos delta theta by 2, and then we also have the friction force minus mu s delta n, this is equal to 0. So, this is sigma fx, we do sigma fy is equal to 0. So, there is a delta n, and then we have minus t plus delta t sin delta theta by 2 minus t sin delta theta by 2 is equal to 0. So, now we from here first we will do is find the value of delta n. So, delta n will become equal to minus, it will be equal to 2t sin delta theta by 2. Then there is a second term plus delta t sin delta theta by 2. Now, this term is what we will neglect, because there are two differential elements, delta theta and sin of delta theta actually becomes delta theta by 2. So, therefore, we will neglect this and delta t. So, that second order term is neglected. So, we get the value of delta n, and that delta n is feeded in the first equation. So, when we do that, what we get is delta t cosine delta theta by 2 is equal to mu s into this thing times delta theta. So, this must be equal to 0. I think I have not put this. So, in the limit you take delta theta going to 0, we have sin delta theta by delta theta. So, that will become equal to 1, and when we do that, that means angle theta is in radians, not in degrees. And so, what we get is eventually dt by d theta minus mu s t is equal to 0. That is the relation which we will get for this thing. Now, we separate the variables and integrate, which is a standard this thing. So, dt by t is equal to mu s d theta. So, from here, and then you integrate, t goes from t1 to t2, theta goes from 0 to beta. So, when we do this, we get log of t2 upon t1 is equal to mu s beta, and that gives us a relation between the two belts, that t2 upon t1 is equal to exponential mu s beta. So, that means with the angle of wrap, the tension increases along with this in terms of this in a exponential way. This is something which we know, even we use this many times without probably realizing this. When you tie a knot, actually you are using a principle like this, because in the knot when you tie, the rope itself is being used as tied on the rope itself. So, there is a, so that force required for the knot to move on one side will be related to the other by an exponential factor of the angle of wrap. Of course, in the knot we never don't realize this, because the post as well as the belt are the same things, but that is what you actually do when you tie a knot, and one side when you pull, then only the knot opens, other side you pull, it will not open. So, therefore, that is how this principle of angle of wrap there works on the knot also. So, this is used over many these things. Now, the same concept, I will just, we use this also we have often seen situation when you have what we call as a belt drive, that we have, I don't know how many of you have seen what is called an aate ki chakki. Has anyone seen the place where the wheat gets? So, there definitely you must have come across this two wheels, and let me draw. So, I think you have a small wheel, of course, yeah, there is a simpler example of the cycle and the chain. So, you have a belt which is connecting the two wheels. So, this is what we have, belt connecting two pulleys. Typically in this, and as in the case of a cycle, in fact probably cycle is a more common example. So, what you have is one of these two wheels is the one where you are applying power. In a bicycle, it happens to be the rear wheel, where in fact it is the sprocket on which through the pedal you are applying, not the rear wheel gets the power, but then you are applying it to the sprocket. So, there is a driver wheel which I will say, and this is the direction in which you will do it on a bicycle. Okay. So, we have a driver wheel like this, and we have a second wheel which is a driven wheel. So, this of course your problem will specify which is the driver wheel, which is the driven wheel. This is something which you will design. You will provide power to one end and you will extract power from the other end. So, we have a driver wheel and a driven wheel, and the driver wheel will rotate in a particular way. Now, the driver wheel is rotating, the belt or the chain which is in touch with the driver wheel is moving because it is in contact with the driver wheel. So, here the belt is being moving because of the driver wheel, which will move faster, the driver wheel or the belt. When it is no slip, both will move at the same rate. But what is causing it is the wheel or the pulley which is causing the belt to move. Okay, and in this case, what happens is the belt moves, and because of the movement of the belt, the wheel moves. So, that is how this transmission is taking place. In one case, this is being moved by an external source. This starts to move, so the belt starts to move, and because of the motion of the belt, this starts to move. So, therefore, fundamentally there are two different things. In one case, the wheel starts to move, which is what causes the belt to move, and the belt by its chance it causes the other wheel to move because of its motion. Okay. So, this is the case. Now, what we have is if suppose I am, so basically what I am doing is I am showing TA and TB. I shouldn't show it like this without a cut, because if I am cutting it on the right side, then the two tensions in the two sides will be TA and TB. Now, there is often a confusion, which of them is bigger? Is TA bigger or TB bigger? So, now no, so see, TA and TB will be the same on both the wheels, on both the belts. If I look at the right side, I will have a TA here and a TB there. Now, how do we figure out which is bigger, TA or TB? How do we get that? We can get this from two facts. One, from the fact that this is a driver wheel, that means this wheel will move, and that is what is causing the belt to move. If the belt is moving, then in which direction will the friction move? The belt is moving like this, the wheel is moving faster. So, that is one way of getting it. The other way of getting this could be, and which I find straightforward, is that because this is a driver wheel, that means a moment is being applied on this wheel in this direction. So, if I am applying a moment in this direction and I do a moment balance, what I will get is TB plus this moment must be equal to TA. If I do the moments about the center, then TB times R plus the moment which is being provided, because this is the driver wheel, it provides the moment. So, a moment is being applied on this. So, TB plus M is equal to TA. So, that means TA will be bigger. So, this is what is called the tight side, the other side is called the slack side. We are not going into theory of belts, but this is just to determine which is bigger. So on the driver wheel, so if I draw free body diagram of the driver wheel, TA, TB, so then I have TA times R is equal to okay, and you will get the same direction, same thing from the friction argument also. The wheel is moving faster than the belt, or just at that time wheel will have a tendency to move faster. So that means the wheel is moving in the forward direction, so belt is moving in that direction. So if the belt is moving in that direction, friction on the belt will be in the clockwise direction. So therefore again friction plus TB must give us TA. So both from friction argument as well as the moment argument, but the moment argument please put it on the driver wheel and the direction of motion. So then there will be no confusion. Now so that means we have a case, and similarly when you do the analysis on the other side, you will get the same thing. But now the question comes, if it's a case of limiting motion, just about to slide, on which end will the belt slide first? See, we have an angle beta on the left side and or beta 1 on the left side, beta 2 on the right side. On which of these will we use TA upon TB is equal to e to the power of mu beta, beta 1 or beta 2? Both the sides, the tension in the belt will be the same, assuming it is non-accelerating. So on the right side and the left side, the tensions are the same. So now this is beta 1, this is beta 2. So the question I am posing is TA upon TB is equal to e to the power of mu beta 1 or e to the power of mu beta 2. How do we find this? Or which of these is correct? Where will the slipping take place first? At a lesser angle or a bigger angle? At the lesser angle. See, TA upon TB has to be one of these, and so for just impending slip, it has to be the lower of the two values. If it has to be lower of the two values, that means you have to look at beta 1 and beta 2 and see whichever is lower. Whichever is lower, slipping will take place at that point. In this case, it happens that beta 1 is less than beta 2. So that means this relation will be valid for beta 1, because if we apply it for beta 2, then it will already slip for beta 1, and that will not be allowed. So therefore we look at the lower of the two angles. That is where the limiting condition will be reached first. So that is how we work this out. Okay, so how to find this? So slip, so this will at the end where the angle is less, so look for lesser of the two angles look for the lesser of the two angles, beta 1 and beta 2. An example of this in the book, a flat belt connects a pulley A to pulley B. A similar thing. Now here the coefficients of friction are given between both pulleys and the belt. The smaller pulley has a radius 1 inch, the bigger pulley has a radius of 8 inches, and this is the driver pulley. So this is the motor which is running, and the direction is clockwise. So it is basically the red arrow shows the direction of the driver wheel. The driven wheel will of course move in the direction like this. So it will move in the, so this one is moving like this, that will also move in the same direction. That's how it will. Now firstly here the angle of contact on the smaller pulley will be less. On the bigger pulley it is more than 180. On the pulley B the angle of contact is less than 180. So therefore the basically we have to apply T1 upon T2 on this pulley. And once again which of the tensions is bigger, so we draw the free body diagrams of the two pulleys. So first I draw the free body diagram of the smaller pulley. On the smaller pulley I have this angle of wrap is 120 degrees. This is T1, T2, and as before, as we said, this tension is bigger. It's the same situation as what I discussed. It's the same direction of motion, so therefore this tension is bigger. This is T1. Now this was given in the problem. Let me see where there's the, this one says 600 pounds. Okay, a felt belt. I think somewhere something is missing. This data that this should be 600 pounds is already a part of the problem. Have I think the full problem has not been, this has to, no, this has to be moved down. I think we have hidden a part of the problem. It says the tension in the top part of the belt is 600 pounds, and we have to find the moment, the how much is being extracted from the driven pulley. That is what the problem is. So therefore, given that this is 600 pounds, first we draw the free body diagram of this belt and we work out the value of T1. Once I work out the value of T1, which comes, and as I said, to get this we look at the lesser angle, and once we have this, then we draw the free body diagram of the other pulley. On the other pulley there will be some contact forces, it is there, then the pulley is rotating in this way. So therefore the whatever moment you are extracting, that will be in the same way. So on the pulley this will put a moment in this direction, because this is the driven wheel, you are extracting the moment from it. So what it applies on this will be in the other direction. So therefore we have this MA which we wanted to find out. We know the two tensions, so therefore the difference of the tensions multiplied by the radius of the pulley will give us how much moment will be, or the torque which can be extracted from the pulley. So this is how we work out the problem. Okay. Now there is, I think these are all straightforward problems. The last type of problems which we have in friction, and which I'll at least maybe just show, we have not done, there are no problems of this in the homework etc. So I'll just maybe briefly show this. I think the book has some. Suppose we have two surfaces in contact. This is what I call a clutch type of a problem. This is what happens in a clutch of a vehicle, that both the sides there are rotating. Here I have shown one side as fixed. And there see there is a contact, there are two surfaces which are rotating. One of them is again a driver surface, the other surface is in touch, and it is because of friction that the other wheel also rotates, and we transmit motion of rotation through friction. So basically somehow when we talk of friction we always think of it as negative, but it is always, it need not always be a negative thing. So here what we have is that, let us think that, sorry, this is a torque, this body which is there is rotating, and at the same time we apply a force to hold this on the wall. So to maintain the contact we apply a normal force, and at the same time this body is rotating. So here in these type of problems, what we want to find out is what is the frictional moment which comes. At the surface there is a friction force, how much is the moment which will come because of friction. And in these type of problems, again what you have to do is look at an area of contact, infinitesimal area, and there you work out what is the friction force on that area. So that will be related to basically coefficient of friction times the pressure, force per unit area, integrate it over the entire surface, and it will not be a force, it will be a moment, because friction force, as this rotates, see, you will see this, as this rotates, then the friction force will cancel out. Friction in this case does not provide a force, it provides a couple, because if you add up all the friction forces they will cancel, but they are acting in such a way that it forms a torque, and that couple you can find out by relating the friction force to pressure. So these type of problems I am not doing, but this is another class of problems which comes in the frictional this thing. The coefficient of friction, let's some one or two general things and then I will just end this discussion on friction. Coefficient of friction, does it have to be less than 1 or can it be bigger than 1? It can be anything. Really, like there is another coefficient we will do, coefficient of restitution, that lies between 0 and 1, but friction coefficient can be anything. The other thing, when we walk, in which direction does the friction force act on our leg? Forward. Actually, because what is happening is when we walk, the knee roll, we are rolling the leg about the knee joint, and we hit the ground in the backward direction. So on the foot, the friction force comes in the forward direction, and actually it's the, if we look at the body overall, the external force which helps us to walk is the force of friction, which is in the forward direction. But again it's this same thing, that relative to this knee, when you try to just slip yourself forward, you will not be able to. For you to walk, the leg has to hit the ground in the backward direction, and that is what provides the forward force on the body so that the body moves. Similarly, when we look at a car, just starts to move, when the car is in the accelerating phase, in which direction does the friction force act? Forward direction. It is friction which provides the acceleration. In the driven wheel, whichever is the wheel which is being driven. See, what happens in a vehicle is, if you if this is the vehicle, if one of the wheels is a driven wheel, the other is not a driven wheel. So suppose the rear wheel is the driven wheel, the front wheel is not a driven wheel. Now for this to move forward, it has to be, sorry, if this is moving in this direction, then let me first erase this because this will create confusion. So if this is to move forward, then this has to be the angular velocity. Okay. Now here what will happen is that means a torque has to be provided by the axle on this wheel in this direction. So this torque has to be provided for the vehicle to start moving forward. On the front wheel, there will be no torque. It comes only on the driven wheel. Okay. Now let us take a case of a vehicle which is moving on up an incline. Now what you will realize is, in fact we solve problems, we show friction force only on the driven wheel, we don't show friction force on the free wheel. Why is that so? Let's take a case of a truck moving up an incline and like this, and we draw a free body diagram. We show a normal force and we show a friction force, and this one we show only normal force, we show the friction force as 0. Why is that so? So, this is the driven wheel, this is the free wheel, and actually this comes from the fact that if you draw the free body diagram of the driven wheel, what all comes here? There will be forces from the axle and there will be a couple. On this wheel what will happen? You will just have forces which are coming from the axle, we have the weight, there is no couple. So, now even if you show a friction force, when you do moment balance you will get friction is equal to 0. Whereas in this case friction has to be there to be able to take care of the torque. If in this case you show a friction and you do a moment about center is equal to 0, you will get friction is equal to 0. No, if it is moving with a constant velocity, if it is accelerating then it will not. But in this case if there is a torque being provided, then friction will have to be there to take care of that torque. Another way of looking at this, you can think of this wheel as a 2-force member. Why is it a 2-force member? Only forces are acting at 2 points. So, that means the net resultant has to pass through this. So, there cannot be any force in the tangential direction here. So, friction here has to be 0. Whereas, in this case this is not a 2-force member, there is a torque acting on it. So, therefore, friction has to be there to take care of this force. Okay.